Welcome to The Village Lantern, a podcast for families living with hidden challenges such as autism and other neurodiverse conditions, and for anyone else wanting to understand, love and support. Our mission is to build understanding, empathy and love for families living with one or more children who have hidden conditions that make life harder in one way or another. We call this extra zing.
When we can create safety around the feelings, right? When a child is feeling angry or feeling upset and there is an adult who is in the room who is calm and is centered and is looking at them and saying, hey, this is not too big for me and I'm here and I've got your back. Well, no matter who that child is, there's going to be a sense of safety that comes from that.
In the spirit of reconciliation, Takes a Village acknowledges the traditional custodians of country here on the lands of the Boon Wurrung and Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, as well as throughout Australia, and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Hi, villagers. I always want to ask how you're going, but I know I can't get an answer. I hope you're well. It's been a little while since we've been on the airways, so to speak, with the Village Lantern podcast. For those families who are living a similar life to us, you will understand that there are peaks, not so much troughs as well, but peaks, certainly of times when things get particularly more consuming and challenging. And we've been in one of those with our family recently. We've made the decision to homeschool one of our kids. Some of you may have seen that on socials. It's been a long, considered decision. We made every effort with the schools we were at and with the experts around us to try and find a way to make it work for one of our kids, and we just made the decision that it wasn't the right time for them. So here we are, facing into homeschooling. Really keen for any listeners or families who've got experience either now or in the past and how it's gone and what's worked well, and any suggestions that you have. I really hope to hear about those. You can also see that we're trying a new mode, or at least an additional mode, adding video into our podcasting. So bear with us while we're working through that, but hopefully that adds another dimension to connecting with us and our stories. I am introducing today an absolutely thrilling conversation. Maybe I tend to be an over-exaggerator, but I really hope you find it as interesting and insightful as I did. I'm absolutely pleased and honoured to say that I had Lael Stone in to meet with me and to have a conversation on the Village Lantern podcast. Lael describes the purpose of her work as being able to help all humans to understand themselves better and to be inspired to live the life they desire, which is just, speaking my language in so many ways. I've been following Lael for a while now, and when I heard her talk about connection and compassion as the fundamental principles for living, I felt just compelled to reach out. To be honest, I didn't expect to hear from her. Lael's so busy from all the media appearances that you can very easily find if it doesn't take much to look. But I was really moved by a conversation I heard, and I reached out to her. And to my surprise, Lael came back to me immediately, and she is every bit the compassionate, generous, kind, wholehearted person that you hear or read in her written work. So if you haven't heard of Lael before, or if you haven't heard her speak, you're in for an absolute treat. But if you follow parenting, in particular compassionate parenting in any way, there's every chance you have come across Lael Stone. Lael's a speaker, an educator and an author who defines her passion as supporting parents to understand their children, helping adults to process their own childhood trauma, and creating an education systems that value emotional awareness. Lael gave a TED Talk titled How to Raise Emotionally Intelligent Children in 2020, which has since clocked up over 1.5 million views, which is phenomenal. Lael is co-founder and co-host of the Aware Parenting podcast with over 500,000 downloads with listeners from all over the world. Lael's a published author of Raising Resilient and Compassionate Children. She's a regular contributor on several online publications and a sought-after public speaker and creator of several online programs and workshops. Lael's also a contributor to the Resilience Project, which has great scope across Australia now, and she's recently been a regular guest on one of my favourite podcasts, The Imperfects, and was also a guest on some of the live shows that they recently did. If that wasn't impressive enough, Lael conceived of a school that embodied her passions and values, and together with a dedicated team of parents, she opened Woodline Primary School in 2021. In this conversation, we talk about acceptance, self-awareness and faith in the context of parenting neurodiverse kids, but it's really a conversation about how to live the life you have in the best way you can. I generally try to keep our episodes about 40 minutes, but this one was too good to edit, so it is a bit longer. I don't think you'll mind, but I really hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I do, and I really hope to hear your feedback. All right, thanks so much. Bye. I am beyond thrilled to welcome Lael Stone here. Lael's just been telling me about all the many invitations that she received, so I feel very, very honoured to have you here. Welcome, Lael.
Thank you for having me.
I said earlier as well that I'll try not to fangirl too much. I've by no means covered everything that you've done and produced and read and written and published, but even the small amount that I have listed here is enormously impressive. Lael, supporting parents to understand their children and helping adults to process their own childhood experience. That is your life work.
Yes, for now. This way, I never say it's forever because you never know. I found that even in the 20 years that I've been working with families, it's moved in different ways, depending on where my children have been at different phases and different phases of my life. So I look forward to what may be coming next.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas?
I don't. I look, it's interesting. I've been working with families for a long time now, mainly about children. You know, when my kids were younger, it was really condensed in those beautiful young years, and then they moved into those tween and teen years, and then I became really, engrossed in that. And then now two of them are adults, and the third's on the way to being an adult. And now I find myself really probably leaning more towards working just with adults around their own inner stuff. And that just applies not just to parents, but to all adults, because I think we've all got our stories and our wounds and our imprints that some work for us really well and some don't. And I think it's such a key to helping us live the best life we want when we start to unpack some of those stories. So I think that's where it's headed at the moment.
So connection and compassion are I suppose, some of the things that are a consistent theme for you, and they are just my favourite things. I mean, it actually gives me goosebumps to think about being, this conversation and what we're going to learn from you, and our listeners are going to no doubt have many epiphanies.
Let's hope so.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've also noted that your purpose is to help all humans understand themselves better and be inspired to live the life they deserve. I mean, what is more important?
That's it. Well, I think, what are we here for? We're not here to make a ton of money and drive the best car and look, the best in a pair of jeans. Like, all those things can be great, but we're actually here to learn about relationships and to, I have a saying, I think we're here to learn how to come home to ourselves, to be the best version of ourselves. And I think from the moment we're born, particularly depending on what family you're born into, we begin to develop this identity that perhaps isn't who the true essence of us is. And that sometimes we do that to fit into society, to fit into our parents' expectations. And then we do all that and we find these ways to cope and survive. And then we get to adulthood, and particularly parenting, I think, just brings up so much stuff for you. We then have to learn to undo a lot of that to actually come back to the true essence of who we are. So I feel like we do this round circle.
We do, and we only get one chance. That's, we only get one chance. It's so funny. I don't know if you listened to Chrissy Swan's.
I did, yeah.
I mean, it was brilliant. There's so much in there. But I was having this moment where she was saying things and I was like, this is crazy. Like, so many of her little stories that she told were absolutely things that I had recently or in the last few years gone through. And one that I loved was the photo that she keeps of herself.
Yes.
And I actually posted something maybe a year ago now of a photo of myself when I was 7. And I had no front teeth and I had pigtails that were all messy and a little headband. And my face was just full of what I now see as the true essence of who I still am, which was enthusiastic, excited, full of passion and joy and hope. And I have been looking at that photo, and I've kept it up in my wardrobe. And when I've been through a whole lot of really hard stuff, like we all have, And that is so powerful to me because I still feel like her. I still feel like that, hyperactive, enthusiastic, slightly dishevelled little kid. But it's taken me a long time to get back to her and still to work on that. But there's so much that Chrissy Swan talks about. The other one that I loved was the tuck shop, how she's just I do that too. I do that too. My children, and actually in one moment of what I thought was revealing shame, I said to someone, my dirty secret is that my children have a tuck order every day. Because it was one of those points in our life, and they hadn't in their whole lives, but where things got so hard for us that we started to just, do those things. And it's fine now. I'm like, no worries, that's great. You get your combination of things, it's fine, for now.
I think I did love what Chrissy was talking about I think particularly coming home to herself and realising that a lot of her life she'd been conditioned to make everybody else happy, which is a common theme for a lot of the adults I work with.
Yeah.
And what would it be like if she put herself in the centre? And I think mothers do that because we are of service to our kids a lot of the time, and we do put our needs way down the list. And so I think it's important that when we actually take stock and go, well, what am I doing here? And what are the reasons why? And does this feel good for me anymore?
Yeah.
I love the photo thing. I often when I used to do talks for parents of teenagers, I would always invite them to find their most awkward teenage photo and stick it on the fridge so they could look at it and just remember how challenging it is being a teenager.
Yeah.
And I used to do that all the time, have my screensaver was the most full-on photo of me with a perm. Like it's one of those soft-focused photos with my mum and I, right?
With like
in the
gloss,
80s.
maybe.
Yeah. And there's it's just all soft-focused, and we've both got perms, and it's just so awkward. And I look at that version of Lael and I think, oh my God, she was just so unsure about who she was and going through puberty and trying to figure out her place in the world. And it really helped me to look at that a lot when my teens were going through those phases, to just remember how big that transition is. And how what I needed back then was a lot of gentleness and a lot of
patience,
loving, patience, and just some anchoring, someone to just hold me and saying, hey, I've got you, even while it feels really wild out there.
Yes, and even while you're still kind of trying to pull away, because on some level you're trying to be an adult. There's so many things that I know, so many rabbit holes I'm sure I could go down, but one of the things I wanted to explore with you in your themes of understand your child and then understand yourself. And one of the things that we parents of neurodivergent kids find extra hard, because I think it's really hard to understand anyone else anyway. And I listened to the Imperfects podcast that you were on, and one of the hosts said something around, I've just realised that they're a little human in there and I don't really know them. And that's how we feel, but extra, because our children, I have an autistic child who also has ADHD, and my two other boys have ADHD, but it's more mild. But the autism in particular is a communication and social disorder. And what that means for many children, of course they're all different, is that it's really hard for them to imagine what someone else might be thinking, which is massive when you think about how much you need that to get along in the world. And also to be able to understand and articulate their own feelings. So and I'm only going to talk for myself, but I imagine it's similar for many parents like me, is that when we try to get to that bottom of what are those feelings, often they don't know.
Yes.
So and then that's a really kind of challenging process. I've started looking at those big posters you can get, that have all the different, there's mad, sad, whatever, and then all the different iterations of that. Because I feel like we can all do better at learning our own feelings and giving them words and seeing where they fit in that scale, or I think it's a circle. But it is an extra hard thing, and you don't want to put words in their mouth.
Yes.
And so, I'm interested in based on all your experience, because while it is harder, it's still the same. Yeah. What do you think are the ways to really be able to unpack what some of those feelings are, especially if the kids don't have the right words for them?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think as adults, our first default is to want to know what's wrong, right? So our brains kick in. We see a child who's upset, and our first thing is what's wrong, and usually the next thing is how do I fix it, because it's uncomfortable watching a child feel really upset, right? And I know that when our children are struggling, or perhaps they haven't been picked for a team, or they're having an issue with a friend, or they're struggling with learning, every single part of us wants to jump in and make it okay for them because we love them and we don't want to see our kids hurting or struggling. That's human, and that's a sign of love. And I think our default is often, what's the why? Why is going on? Why am I feeling this? And a lot of us as adults will do that when we're upset. We'll start to try and analyse it all so we can kind of process it and move on quickly instead of actually just feeling what we're feeling, right? And so absolutely hearing you say about, sometimes we don't know what they're feeling or they don't know what they're feeling. And my response to that is, can we just be with what's in front of us without understanding exactly what it is yet? So when a child is really angry, we can just say, I can see you're angry or frustrated and I'm here and what do you need? And we meet them in that without having to quickly start unpacking what is wrong and how do I do this and how to do that. And I think there's also, there's those beautiful parts of attunement, and I always come back when I'm working with parents to go, you know your child better than anyone. We have so many experts out there saying do this and do that. But for me, at the end of the day, you are the one that's attuned to them. You know who they are. You know their cues and their signs. Trust your gut, what you feel is going on, right?
Yeah.
Because even in those situations when we're perhaps seeing one of our kids who's really angry or upset, if we can be attuned to them, we'll have a sense that there's something, right? And even if we don't know exactly what it is, can we just meet them where they're at in that minute? So it's like, I can see you've got some big feelings and your body's, you're telling me that you're pretty angry at the moment. So what do we need to do to help this anger?
Yeah.
Or what can I help you do to find some calm for yourself? And really, I think in those moments, and that applies to even if we have a 3-year-old, one of the biggest things we might do for any 3-year-old when they're upset is move into what's wrong. And we just quickly jump into how do I fix this instead of just perhaps getting on the floor and going, you're really upset. That's okay, mate. I'm here, and let it out. Because I think we all, we're feeling beings and we all have feelings, and we are often, again, taught in our culture to avoid our feelings. So sometimes we go into the mind about it. We like to analyse it. For a long time we've been like, let's just think positive. So, and I'm like, that doesn't feel good for me either.
Yeah.
And then we're also like, I want to kind of shut it down or stop it. And, my sense, and I absolutely do understand that all children are different, but when we can create safety around the feelings, right? When a child is feeling angry or feeling upset and there is an adult who is in the room who is calm and is centered and is looking at them and saying, hey, this is not too big for me and I'm here and I've got your back. Well, no matter who that child is, there's going to be a sense of safety that comes from that because they're not going to feel like they're being judged. They're not going to feel like it's shameful for how they're feeling. And I think one of the important pieces is we're not moving into fixing straight away. We're just moving into, I'm here and I want to help you move these feelings in a way so you can find your way back into your center. So I think, first off, that's one of the most powerful things we can do is just meet the feelings without having to jump into the why and what's going on. And of course, again, depending on the age of your child and who they are and who you know them to be, you may ask some questions. But for me, firstly, I'm always about emotional safety first. How do we bring the safety? How do we bring a centeredness in our body? And this applies to anyone, whether it's your partner, whether it's a friend or a work colleague. When they're angry and upset, what they don't need is for you to jump in with 1,000 questions and then come in with a fix of what's going on. What I think all of us want is someone to say, hey, this looks hard and I'm here.
Yeah.
And keep going.
I think that is so true and so hard.
Yes.
And our children are often in fight or flight.
Yeah.
Our children experience a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's driven by lots of things, sensory issues, not understanding, being misunderstood, having a need to control. So there's so many times when our children are in that place. And I think there's a level of acceptance there about that. And I think that's taken me a long time. And I think certainly as all my children have gotten older and I've paid more attention to the whole context. And as you say, it's not just that in that moment, it's whatever happened in the lead up to that. And I do think with our kids, time is the thing because it's a developmental disorder and it means that our children will not develop in the, in inverted commas, typical way.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you don't know how and when. Yeah. So there's that, which is already different, but the acceptance around the extent and the amount of times when the children are in that place And then I think, as you say, the whole thing around the self-management, because part of the acceptance is actually accepting that you can't do as much as other people, or you can't do as much as what you might have wanted to. Because if you try to do that, you're going to get stressed and annoyed. And then then you want to get to the bottom of why? Because I can fix it because I've got other things to do or places to be.
Yes.
And I think, one of the things I'm interested in hearing from you on is, you might meet a lot of really stressed out parents who would say, I don't know how to get to that place of being tethered, which I absolutely agree with you, and I love that idea. But how do we get there when we're already confused, the children's confused? It's kind of chaos, like emotional chaos.
Yes.
And then you go outside and you get judged.
Yes.
Because your child is not behaving in a way that's age appropriate.
Yeah.
There's so many layers.
Yes.
And so I think more important than ever is that whatever that work can be to help us to accept, understand ourselves, let go, all the more.
Yeah, I think I love what you're saying there, because I think it is the big work. And I often, in any parent-child dynamic, will often say to parents, particularly if a child's having a big stories going on, or there's, whatever's happening for them. And I'll often will ask adults the question, what do you think your child's here teaching you? Like, what is their gift for you in this? If we could look at it through the lens of they're sitting there saying, hey, Mum, Dad, I want to gift you something, right? And maybe that is patience. Maybe that is non-judgment. Maybe it is deep acceptance. Maybe it is compassion. And I'm probably going to do it in a way that's really going to push all your buttons, right? And I think this is any child, and again, we've all got our bits and pieces with our kids.
Yeah.
And are we able to sit and look at that and take a deep breath and go, gosh, what a brilliant teacher they are for me around actually just tuning into who they are, trusting their journey, and being that advocate for them. And so what does that look like? Well, maybe that looks like that we do turn up to school late because we've had a really hard morning getting dressed. And you know what? We may cop stuff from the school and we go, you know what? In the bigger picture, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because I am my child's ally in this moment, and I'm really turning up for them. And I remember once having my middle daughter, she was probably about 6 or 7 at the time, and it was one of those days. It was a birthday party, I think, for a young sister. So it was all about someone else. She had a whole lot of feelings going on. We went to a restaurant for dinner. Like, we really, in hindsight, we did too many things in the day. When you're just this is not going to go well. Yes. And my beautiful middle daughter is really sensitive to space. So she's highly attuned that, and it's too much for her. She doesn't have the capacity of her brothers and sister. And so we got to this restaurant and it just kind of all unfolded, and she just had this big meltdown, and my in-laws were there and people were watching, and my husband's looking at me and I'm like, I'm going to take this outside because I really am welcoming her feelings. It's too much, right? And in that moment, I remember, being looked at from my in-laws and people in the restaurant, and it was one of those times, and I think luckily I'd had a lot of practice of what it feels like to hold feelings in front of people. But I remember just looking at my little one who was just so overwhelmed, and I thought, I am your protector here. So, I'm going to block out what everybody's looking at. I'm going to hone into you. And all of a sudden I just kind of, it's like I had tunnel vision. All I could see was her. And I thought, I am here just to be your safety right now. So I kind of picked her up and we went outside of the restaurant, and she just lost it outside, and I just stayed calm, and I was with her for a good 25 minutes or something. And inside, my in-laws were saying to my husband, Lael's food's getting cold and that's not okay. And my husband just said, you know what? Our daughter's more important than her pizza, and that kind of made them be a bit quiet. Yeah. And, there's no judgment to them. They, they grew up in a time and culture where children must be good all the time. They must sit at the table, they must eat, and that's their expectations, and that's okay. And that is okay. There's no judgment on them. They were just doing what they know and see. But I think there's been many experiences like that where it's really taught me to come back to this beautiful child in front of me is really asking, can you see me and can you hold me? Now, that's super challenging for us when most of us have been brought up to be good boys and good girls, where it's all about what does everybody else think of us. Yes. And then when you have children who are not fitting into the norm, or who are pushing these beautiful limits, or who are gifting us this beautiful lesson in acceptance, it's really, really challenging, and it's it's hard to hold your centre in that.
Yeah.
And I feel very grateful for the times where I've been really tested on that. And the older my kids got and the stronger I got, the more I was like, yes,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, even I see, look, my kids, you know, didn't particularly fit into the mainstream school system, so they all did lots of different things. And you know, I had wobbles about that came up a bit, but I've been conditioned to go that you must do year 12 and you must do this and you must do that. And then I was like, no, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
Like, who says, right?
Yeah.
What is this person in front of me actually saying? They're saying that system does not serve me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to move my body. I learn best when I move my body. And I'm like, great, let's find a way to do that.
Yeah.
And I feel so grateful for them. They kind of like my kids helped me smash my whole belief of what we're conditioned to believe we should be and do.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to question that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes these beautiful children come along to just say, hey, I'm going to just give you an opportunity here to break down the conditioning that we've been brought up with, and also say, can you see me and what is it that serves me? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And it also can feel incredibly lonely, and it also can feel really isolating, and it can also feel really, really hard. You know, and I just have so much compassion for parents, because I think at the end of the day, we love our children so much. We just want them to be happy. We want them to live their best lives. And sometimes the world does not support them in that at all. And sometimes the narrative out there doesn't support them in that. And that's hard. It's really, really hard. And you know, at that point, I always come back to going, okay, what would compassion look like for myself in this story? What would compassion for my children look like? I mean, there is no doubt, I'm sure you have so much empathy for all parents, particularly ones who have neurodivergent children, when you know how big it is, right? You have deep compassion for them. You would never look and judge someone because you like, I get you, I hear you, I see you.
Yeah.
This is big, this is hard.
And that has been, all the things you just listed of gifts have absolutely been gifts that I've received. It's taken me time to see them as that, but now I wouldn't give it back.
Yeah.
You know, I do feel like I am fundamentally changed as a person, and for the better. I often say that I grew up bang smack in the middle of mainstream, somewhere up the front, you know, like life was, on reflection, pretty easy for me, and I never even knew or had awareness about how else it could be. And I don't know that I would have.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I understand what it's like being on the sideline, being judged. And I have had to battle all my deep fears about that, because I absolutely was way too concerned about what other people thought of me. Didn't even know that that was a thing. That was so deeply ingrained. And I now understand that is essentially human. It's a part of our need to be in the group so we don't like get eaten by a lion or starve. But also what I understand now about ADHD, maybe you're aware of this concept called rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
No, tell me more.
Mm-hmm. So it's like a visceral, physical, painful response to criticism. And I didn't know, but I've always known that I've probably reacted unreasonably to criticism because I already had this belief that there was something wrong with me. I didn't know that I had ADHD until I was in my 40s, but I have always thought that there's something wrong. And that when you get criticised or even constructive feedback, it feels like validation. There it is. I knew there was something wrong and now they can see it too. And because you're quite emotional, sensitive person and you don't really have that perspective, that's a very real thing as well. And so I've had to do a lot of work, but I'm so relieved now, so relieved that I can see that I can understand the difference, and that work around self-love has had such a strong part in that. My psychologist was talking to me about self-compassion for years, and I got it intellectually, but I don't think I could really, there were so many really deeply worn paths in my brain through to my feelings that took a long time to unwind. But now I don't, and also you're given lots of opportunities to have to work through it, because there are so many times when your child is doing really it's more than unexpected.
Yes.
It's unacceptable, and sometimes it's antisocial.
Yes.
And if you take on the extra fear of judgment while you're trying to help someone who's in distress, it's actually impossible. So lots of practice, but also that work around, I know I'm doing my best and I don't know what else to do. I mean, it does get a bit complicated. There's been times when both my other children have sort of said to me in moments of real crisis, why aren't you doing anything? And I'm like, I don't know what to do because it's so shocking. Often they're quite violent behaviour or aggressive behaviour, abusive behaviour coming from this tiny little person, and it's directed at yourself and everyone else around you. And it's hard and it hurts. But you can also see this little person who's completely terrified. I don't know what the answer is, but I wonder what the experience is for siblings who see their parent going, I actually don't know what to do either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, kind of layers, and then you're worrying about the siblings and there's just all these layers about worrying about other people's feelings and trauma.
Yeah. And I think what you said, which I must say in working with thousands of adults, that core fear and wound, which I think many of us have around not being approved of, runs deep in many. And, and it makes a lot of sense to me often when I work with adults and we look at what their biggest pains are, or, where their biggest fears are, or what it comes back to, or a lot of where their wounds sit or trauma sit, it comes back to that same space, which is, am I enough? Am I lovable just the way I am? Now, many of us grew up in a time where we were in a behaviourism paradigm where it was all about being good. I'll reward you when you're good. I'll take something away from you when you're bad. So our imprints and foundations are set up as, I will love you when you're good. So, of course, because our fundamental survival is based on attachment, right? And so we know right from the beginning, I need food and shelter to survive, and I also need this attachment figure to take care of me. Now we begin to learn as little babies that if we don't fit into that mould, then perhaps we're not going to be taken care of. So we learn to be good. We learn to shut our feelings down. We learn to fit into the mould of what these adults want in order to be loved. And that runs deep and it's often very unconscious. And then we go into a schooling system, which is all, again, about being good boys and good girls. And so it is reiterated there that, in order to get praise, you must do your work the way I want it to. You must be good. You must sit and listen. And if you don't, I'm going to take something away from you, or you don't go outside to play. So it's reiterated again and again and again. And then we become adults where we're still very much the good boy, good girl. Do people approve of me or not? We often don't take risks because we're worried, what if people judge me, or what if I fail? So that plays out as well. And then, of course, then we have children, and if they don't fit into the mold of what we want, then there's the story again. Like it's I love what you're saying in the sense of that it is a continuous story to keep coming back to our enoughness, and that it is not based on other people's approval, but that inner knowing that I am enough just the way I am. Yeah. And again, I think our children are asking for that from us. They're asking to be seen in that way, that I am enough just the way I am. I don't have to be anything else in order to be approved of, right? And so there's that beautiful mirror going on. And then coming back to what you're saying again about those times where we don't know what to do and how that may be for siblings. One of the big things that I say to parents all the time is that it's really important for us to be authentic with our kids because they know and they feel it anyway, right? When we are sad and upset, they know when we are in that space, and they'll come up and they'll ask you and they'll be like, are you okay, Mum? And if we do that, yeah, I'm fine, then what happens is they learn to distrust what their gut is saying to them. They're like, I don't know, I'm feeling like you're not fine and you're telling me you are, so then maybe I'm wrong. And we are much better off saying, you know what, I'm really sad today, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and journal because that makes me feel better, or I'm going to go call a friend, or I'm going to go for a walk, and we start modelling what we do when that feels hard. And even in that moment where perhaps you are frozen and you're like, I don't know what to do, you're better off just saying, hey, I'm stuck in this moment. I don't know what to do, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. And, it's not a bad thing that our children see that because they're seeing you in your authentic self, and that's what we need. And, my invitation after something like that would be then to go back and talk to them and go, hey, how did that feel for you? Did that feel a bit scary? You know, because your sibling is having a really hard time. Where are you at with that? What goes on for you? And to create the space for them to talk about how it feels and be human in the sense of like, you know what, there's some days I don't know what to do, or there's some days I try all my tricks and none of it works. And so all I can do is just breathe and wait for it to pass. And even in that sense, you know, we're not trying to convince our kids, yeah, it's fine. We're actually just going, I'm a human as well. And there is no perfect, because there's not. And really what our children need from us is that humanness.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm loving is I'm loving raising children knowing that I have ADHD, because I can say to them, I'm really anxious at the moment. It's just my nervous system. Or if one of my kids goes from 0 to 10 really fast and I say, that's hard, isn't it? I know how that feels. That's how our brains are. And you have to get used to it. And I always say, I'm sure I didn't invent this, I'm sure someone much cleverer did, that it's not your fault, but it is your problem. And you have to find a way to manage it. But that you can, but it's hard. And it's okay if it's hard. One of the things that I have learned in those moments of not knowing what to do is that I'm probably like most people, have got a really strong, I think it's also my hyperactive ADHD. I want to jump to action. Yes. I'm like, what do I do? I need to do something, because that productive doing something gives me whatever the dopamine or whatever it is in my brain that's a bit low, and it makes me feel less chaotic. So that need for action is like something I'm still working on it every day, but that acceptance that, yep, it's really hard. I don't know the answer, but something will happen.
Yes.
And one thing that has happened for me, which is absolutely a miracle, is I have found a faith, not a formal religious one, but a faith in a belief in something greater than me. And that has been life-changing, because now I don't feel like I'm in charge, because that chaos, with my hyperactive ADHD, you grow up with chaos. Your brain's in chaos all the time, and it's always, thinking and moving too fast, and you feel like you need to control. And one of the gifts that I have learned from having children, or one particular child who I absolutely cannot control this. I can't fix it. I need to understand it. I need to accept it and do my very best. And maybe that's how I got to this spiritual awakening, so to speak, is that now I can let go of that fear of not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yes.
It's actually, I feel like a different person. And you can't bottle it up. There's a whole story behind how this happened for me, which was a very, very hard one. But it's been the most incredible thing, and I think it's something that all parents can really benefit from, if you can find a way to say, I don't know what's going to happen, particularly with our kids. A lot of the time they can't cope at school. Schools are so beyond what can suit them.
Yes. And
there are no solutions. I mean, at the moment, my daughter's at a special school, which is for children who have behavioural social challenges. It's still not working. And we've jumped from school to school and tried all these different things, because I am optimistic as well. I'm like, now I understand more, we'll go and find it. And actually,
build one.
No. No, absolutely. This is another conversation. I don't think we'll get to it. I want to hear about your school, but I've absolutely thought about building a school, because I know the number of families that I talk to, their children are absolutely so unhappy and distressed.
Yes.
And actually, I can talk from my child's perspective. I know how hard she is at school. I don't think they're not doing the right thing. I know how hard it is, and it has to be a radical change. It can't be just tweaking it at the sides, even a special school. It's radical. So I don't judge that they can't manage her, but it's that sadness that actually school is not the current version of school. And I'm looking forward to hearing yours, because I imagine it's a whole lot closer, but school is not for our kids.
Yeah.
I know it's probably not for lots of kids actually now. And because, as I say, I sort of flew through school. I mean, I had anxiety and I did think, why can't I study like other people, whatever, but I did okay. But now I can see with all my children that school and COVID was a great insight into that, that they are not designed. They cannot sit for 8 hours a day.
Totally.
They cannot do it. Yep. And why should they, and why should they feel not good enough because they can't?
Agreed.
You can get very, very, I get quite cross about it. And I do intend to as I continue to work through this and I've got some ideas already about the different things that could help, but they are at the edges, you know. I mean, in the absence of a really significant change, I don't think that it can work for our kids.
I would agree with you. Before I jump into that, I just want to come back to your beautiful sharing about what you've found that's holding you. And, you know, for me, I often explain that as, what if we trusted this experience?
Yes.
What if we could trust our child is bringing what they need to our family unit, to this family system, to their specific journey? And, you know, I kind of probably describe what you're talking about. For me, I often just see, and I've just learnt this in my own parenting journey, they're asking me to sit in a place of trust for who they are in the world. And it does make a difference, because it then, as you say, we can't control that. We can't go, well, but I believe this should be better for you. We actually have to sit back and say, show me. Show me what you need. Show me where you need to be. If I was to sit in a place of trust and look through the lens of trust, what would I see here? And that's scary, because we're not taught to trust in this world. We are not taught to trust at all. And to be in that place, there is some beautiful freedom in it, and it also feels terrifying.
It's scary, but it's scary either way.
That's you know, you can either be in fear or you can be in trust.
And so for me, my sort of awakening, that's what I call it, is that I now understand that the universe, there's so many things that are happening. And if my child can't tell me, somehow else I will find out. I will come across someone, I will hear something, something will come to me which will answer my questions. It may not be the answer that I want, but it's definitely coming. And I'm just opening my eyes and I'm waiting. And I can't tell you, someone with hyperactive ADHD, I never could have imagined. Now, of course, I've been in therapy for a long time. I am medicated. I'm doing a lot of self-care, and I have been. It's now incredibly much better. But I could never have predicted that for myself. That hyperactive little kid who couldn't stop is now, I've got this deep calm because I've let go of the belief that I'm in control. What a relief.
It's beautiful.
It's terrifying being in control. And what a disaster it ended up being for me in so many ways. And so I feel so grateful, but I also, I can see now that that's available to everyone. If you're willing to let go. And that is so scary, but also I never want to go back to that.
And I do relate to what you're saying, because there's been plenty of times in my journey with my kids where I have been like, I don't know really what to do here, or you're presenting and you're showing me this and it doesn't fit into what that mainstream looks like. And sometimes I would just sit there and go, I am really open for a solution for us all to get our needs met here. I'm just going to hold that as a possibility. I'm going to just keep sitting in the possibility, and I'm going to wait to see where it's guided to. And sure enough, something always did turn up. And someone would send me an email, or I'd see something online, or someone would talk about something and I'd go, oh, yes, okay, let's follow that, and then see what happens. And ultimately it often did follow the path that was needed. But yeah, it is really tricky. And again, most of us, with control helps us to feel safe on some level. We're really conditioned to go, if I can control this environment around me, then I will be okay. And actually what I think we're all searching for is an internal safety, which is that knowing that I'm enough, that I am safe and I have choice and autonomy and I have a voice where I can speak, and all the things that often we didn't have when we were younger. As adults, we actually like, well, I do now. But so often, because we didn't have those when we were younger, it's the child parts of us that often turn up, that do the parenting or turn up in relationship, and they're not the parts that often serve us, but they're the parts that are just protecting us. So when we move into spaces where we can actually sit in trust, we're actually beginning to operate from the adult part of us, not the wounded, protected child part of us. And, those younger parts of us, they're doing their job. They're just saying, hey, I've got to keep you safe. But often the threat isn't actually there anymore. It's the threat we perceived when we were younger. And so learning to sit in trust and learning to be open, I think, is a part of that journey of growing up into the adult self. But again, a lot of us are not modelled that. And it also requires, us sitting in a bit of the uncomfortable to find that space.
And courage. So to that example of when you made the choice to leave with your daughter when other people are around you with their, views, I think that's the thing that's really hard if your child is not going to school. They're just not going. And you just think, well, what am I going to do? Because, I say to my children, it's the law. You have to go. But that's not a helpful thing to say. And I don't, I sort of say it half in jest, but that being able to sit in that uncomfortable of, I don't know what's going to happen. My eyes twitching now thinking about it, but I don't know. And you just either you can get them there or you can't, and that's okay. Yeah. And then, but it's that catastrophizing thinking of, well, then they're not going to go tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And then I need to do something about that, but I don't know what to do. I think that's the ongoing challenge of sitting in that unknown, in that uncomfortable, and then being brave enough, as you say, having enough courage to, and I do this quite often, if my kids have a mental health day, I take that decision because I know that that's going to get you through. Yeah. You go in after lunch if you need to, just have a sleep in, and they may not sound like really courageous things, but they kind of are because they're against the rules.
Totally.
And you can get like Chrissy Swan said, when the children comment on the tuck order, your mother doesn't like making tuck. It's the same kind of thing. You can't get your kids to school on time. You're not doing the job that society's telling you that you're supposed to do. And I just think, well, you can come in and have a go if you like. Would you like to come in and have a go?
Do you want to get them to put their shoes on? Okay, off you go.
Yeah, and that's the power that I'm now finding with the families that I'm connecting with, because so many you do need to have that courage to say it.
Yes.
And I'm pretty comfortable to say it, but there's a lot of people that say, thank you for saying that, because I couldn't, but I'm really grateful that someone is saying it, because then I realise I'm not alone. And there's so many parents. I mean, I think everything that we're talking about applies to all parents, but in this little niche of families who there is a lot of isolation and shame and judgment, and I think that to your kind of core idea that the only thing you can do is change the way that you are living that. You can do all you like to try and change other people's opinions, but actually that's beyond our control. And what we can control is knowing that we're doing our best, and knowing that if we get it wrong, we'll try again, and knowing that we're not alone.
Yes.
And there's so much power in that.
There is, because I think when we pull our power back from the perceived judgment of others, because sometimes there is judgment, sometimes there's not, but when we pull our power back from that and go, well, what is in front of me and what can we cope with today? And that's the best job we're doing. I mean, the reality is everybody is doing the best job they know how, right? We're all scrambling, we're all like those ducks, sometimes we're not like calm on the top, but frantically underneath the water, those little feet are going. That I think we're all doing the best job we know how, with the information that we have, with the stories, with the traumas that have happened to us. We're all doing it. I often say, if we could stand there as a human and every person could see behind us what our story was with a little snapshot, we would be so loving and compassionate to everybody. Yeah. And I think, one of the things I feel so grateful for of working as a therapist for like nearly 20 years now, I'm listening to thousands of stories. I just know everyone's doing the best they can. Like I don't have judgment around how people do stuff. I have a judgment around the schooling system, but I feel like I'm allowed to around that. But I just go, I know that everyone's doing the best job they know how. Because again, when you hear people's stories and you hear their traumas and you hear what has happened to them, you're just like, oh God, I understand why you need to control everything. Of course you do. It was never safe, right? Or, whatever that is, what stuff is coming up around our children. We are all doing the best that we can, as did our parents and our grandparents. And I really do believe that as humans that we are, and when we have been hurt, we protect ourselves from our hurt, or we can often hurt others because we're trying to make ourselves feel better. Like it just continues on. And I don't think as a society and a culture we have enough understanding of that, because we are very quick to judge and we are very quick to form our opinions. And I think even from our own insecurities, we love to judge and criticise others to make ourselves feel better. Like it's huge.
Yeah, it's
so huge. It's ongoing.
Yeah. What do you think? So you said before that you're working more with adults now, and I can absolutely see how that could happen, because in that work you are chipping away at society, because, isn't there this kind of like butterfly effect? If everyone acts with a bit more love and a bit more compassion, then everyone benefits, and then somehow there's this exponential improvement. One of the things that I do find hard, because it's almost impossible for me to, like, it might get a bit boring, because if anyone raises about anyone else, I'll say, well, we don't know what's going on for them. It's not as kind of entertaining a conversation maybe, but I just think that my experience is that the people around me almost all have different versions of trauma now, because they're the ones that I can connect with most deeply. And while I believe that everyone has got their own pain, not everyone sort of lives it or owns it or expresses it. And that's their choice too. I understand that. But I suppose one of the things that I find hard is when people are sort of unable to open up that possibility that most people are doing their best, and that, if something's unpleasant or unexpected, there's probably some reason behind it. And what I have had to do is just make choices about who I surround myself with, because you can't tell anyone else, be more open-minded, where's your love? I still feel compassion for them, because I think you probably have quite a hard life if you're walking around feeling that everyone's wrong or everyone's not good enough. That's tough. But I don't, I prefer not to be around it, because I'm all about, love and understanding, but you can't push that on anyone else.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing, isn't it? It comes up a lot with couples I've worked with that are like, I wish my partner would get this. And I think I have found over these many years, the people that are the most judgmental are the ones that have got the least self-love.
I know.
Because it's usually, we're judging others to make ourselves feel better, or to justify why we're better or why we're okay. Whereas when people are feeling really content within themselves, they do look through the lens of compassion, and they're often really excited and championing other people's successes. But when, someone isn't perhaps living their best life, or they have got a lot of pain they're not dealing with, and then often the default is judgment around others. And I think it says more about people and just their pain when they're judging than it does around the person they're targeting it at. And that's hard, and I come back to this, is that as humans, we always come from protection, right? We're always trying to keep ourselves safe. And so sometimes that looks like criticism of others, to trying to keep our hearts, protect our hearts, or all those kind of things. It's, we're complex beings as humans, right? And I really do believe that we are not taught what we need to learn how to navigate our feelings and emotions from a young age, because it's often not modelled to us. And I think, I look at this time in history right now where there's mainly the adults that I'm talking and working with who've got children who are coming to this going, I don't want my kids to grow up to do it the way I did. I don't want them to numb their feelings, or I don't want them to have all this anger at other people, or, and they're going, how do I do it differently? And I often say this generation of adults has kind of got the toughest, because they're changing the patterns that have been generations passed down. And it's like learning a brand new language. So learning to respond with compassion and be okay with feelings and find that centre. I mean, it's beautiful that we've got information at our fingertips now where we can learn about it. It's beautiful that we have science and research that backs up what we're doing, but it's not easy because it was not modelled to us. And yet I then look at, okay, but our beautiful children, no matter who they are, they will have a different experience of it, because when they're upset and there is a calm adult there who's not shaming them and not yelling them and not sending them to their room because they're bad, then they are going to have a felt sense in their body that, hey, even when I'm upset, I'm still lovable. There's a parent here that's looking at me going, hey, I've got you. This is big, right? I'm still here. Now that brings a different level of knowing in a child's body, that then they grow up to be able to do that, to be more present, to be able to be with other people's feelings. And I've watched that with my own children, and my son has worked at my school for the last year, and he's about to be 23, and his ability to be with kids who are having hard times, and he works as a disability support worker, so he works with a lot of neurodivergent kids. He is so calm and anchored with them. He sees them for who they are. He never sees a disability. He just sees them for their spirit. And I often say to him, what makes you really good at this work? And he goes, well, I just get to know who they are, and I just see them. And then I just go, right, I'm just going to bring safety to them. And there is not one part of him that judges. He just meets them there, and he can hold such beautiful space. And I look at him and think, I think you do it better than most of the other adults that work at our school, because he's got an embodied sense of what it feels like, because that's what we tried to do with him, raising our kids that way, to be deeply heard, to be seen. So he welcomes feelings, he welcomes tears, he welcomes all of that. None of that's shut down. He's like, yeah, let's bring it, let's move it. What do we need to do? And I see the product of that, and I think
that safety, that like deep sense of safety and self-worth. I see that with my boys. mean, it's kind of, they don't have any choice in it, but growing up, understanding really severe complexities, I mean, of course they struggle with in their own life because it's like it directly impacts them, but I can already see how much more patient and tolerant and understanding they are. And that is such a gift, such a gift for them. And I can see them going off and being comfortable in those situations that plenty of people wouldn't be comfortable in. And so there's their ongoing gift that they get to take out into their lives. One of the things that I hope for them is that they can bring that to their lives, because I think we all are given gifts and we can either embrace them and bring them in, or they can just sit in the back somewhere and maybe never kind of get used. But it's up to them how that kind of comes out for them. But I tell a story, I think I told it on a recent podcast, about my now 10-year-old who might have been 8 or so at the time, and there was a fracas at the playground and I think he got sort of attacked by another child. Kids ran up and said, oh, your son's being bashed up or something, and I kind of ran over, and I think it had ended at that point, and the teachers were all horrified and all the parents were horrified, and I said, are you okay? He was a bit shaken, but I said to him afterwards, that must have been a bit scary. What do you think happened? He goes, I don't know, he's probably autistic or something. And you know what? That wasn't in a judgmental way. That was in his way. He did not carry that trauma home. Yeah. We did not come home saying, oh, you poor Jay, I wanted to make sure that we acknowledged that was hard and scary, but it was over because he could see that it was something that someone else, wasn't hurtful. It wasn't intentional. It was them losing their cool, and it was over for him. And I thought that is a real gift, because you can have a situation and carry it around with you and think, oh, poor me, the world's scary. Or you can have a view where you can sort of make some sense of it and move on. So I think there's a whole lot of gifts that can come from that. One of the things that I do think about with parents in that situation where we're worried about what other people think, and this does come back to that little person in you that wants to be loved and accepted, and I have absolutely lived with this and I still do, is the coming to terms with the fact that lots of people don't like my child because of this very difficult behaviour, and it's not their fault. But I have to really pull back on my panic and fear about me not wanting to be, me not being liked. Yes. And then as a mother, the sadness that your child's being judged and your child's being excluded. Yes. That is such a hard thing, because that is at the core of our own survival. But as a mother, it's our job to protect our children, and we can't control how other people receive our child. Yes. I don't have an answer to that one. Yeah, it's just deeply sad.
It is sad, and I would just say that I would just invite that grief. Yeah. I would invite any adult that is in that position to talk about it, to cry about it, to feel the sadness of it not being the way they wished it could be, the fear that maybe is present, or what is that going to look like in the future. And to just, it's so important to feel those feelings around it and have a safe place to take it, to just feel it and feel the grief and the sadness around it, and the loss on some level of maybe what we thought or perceive may happen. And I think the more that we can process and feel our feelings around that, then the more spaciousness we will have to come back to our child and be that present, safe place for them. And, I think you're exactly right. There is no answer for that. It is one of those painful parts of being human where it maybe never will be the way we want it to be. There may be more pain and judgment that comes with it. And through it all, we just have to keep feeling what we feel and then come back and go, and who can I be for them in this world? And I can advocate for them, and I can love them unconditionally, and I can see them, and I can see the magic and spirit in them even if somebody else doesn't.
It's so painful, but it's also just so human. Yeah. And as a mother, that, or a parent, that fierce sort of desire or drive to try and protect that sometimes you can't. And that's when your kids grow up as well, isn't it? It's the
Yeah.
same kind of thing, like that letting go of, I'm no longer, the bird's out of the nest and I can't control that anymore.
I just dropped my daughter off, who's 19, and she lives in the city because we live down the coast now, and she lives in a share house, and I just took some stuff into the house and I just looked around and went, oh my God, it was disgusting. But it's fine. Like they're all 19 living their best life. And I remember thinking, just put the bags down and walk out. Like, just do not. I'm just like, oh my God, I want to clean this bathroom. It's gross. But I was just kind of looking at it going, she's living a 19-year-old life. And you know what? If she's living like this, that's what they're doing when they're young, then they are, and they'll figure it out as she gets older and grows up. And it was one of those moments where I was like, it's not life-threatening. It's fine. It's just gross.
It is
and
gross,
just walk out, and that's okay. And it is that there's no place for me in that moment to just go, don't you think you should clean it up?
Yeah,
or
totally.
what are your other housemates thinking? I'm just like, no, just turn around, walk out and go, okay, darling, I love you, I'll see you soon. And think she's learning. You've got to let her go. She's got to live in a share house, and she's got to figure out how that looks, and she's figuring out how to pay rent and buy groceries and all those things that you do when you grow up, and you have to let your kids go.
Yeah.
And there's wisdom in actually not getting up in their business.
Yeah.
And actually just standing back and going, life is actually teaching her some beautiful things right now, and it's actually not going to serve her for me to come in and fix all that and to do it. It's actually better off if I just let her find her place, because that's part of growing and evolving.
Yeah, and there's so much of that, what you fix or try to get involved in with your kids and what you step back on. And I think you always just have to kind of test and see what's going to, how does it play out. But I think back to that idea of yourself and really understanding yourself in that context has been really powerful for me as well, because I never struggled socially. In fact, I found it pretty easy. And one of the things that's been really hard for me is understanding or coming to terms with the idea that this is like my child's biggest gap, and having to really separate yourself from what you think their happiness in life will be from what you think it is. And my husband, who's much more kind of socially reserved than me, he says, you don't have to have heaps of friends. You don't have to connect with everyone. And that was like a penny drop moment for me. I was like, oh yeah, because if her life, even her definition of friendship and definition of connection, we have to help her work that out for her, because actually connection is hard for her. She seeks it, but we've got this great team of therapists, and we've had all these meetings where we're like, this is what we're going to have to work out. What is her version of friendship? What does her version of connection look like? Because we can't push ours on her, because it's probably not going to fit anyway. And that now I've moved through that. I'm really fascinated and excited to uncover that with experts and with her, for her, so that it's not, I don't decide if she's, in inverted commas, kind of had a successful life or not. It's, let's work out what does that look like for her, and then she can decide.
That's 100%. And that is, I think, the part of learning to trust our children's journey, is we can have ideas of what we think that should look like, but there is a gift to be able to stand back and say, I'm right here, and I trust you to find what that is. Now, sometimes that needs assistance and help, as you're talking about, and sometimes that needs guidance. But I love that perception of what you're talking about, of just being able to go, well, what is my story here and what's theirs? And I think that is something that turns up in parenting all the time, particularly when we get really triggered around something that might be happening to our kids. Sometimes it's our wound and our story surfacing, and it's actually not even a charge for our child. That can happen in friendship issues. It can happen in not getting picked in the basketball team, and if we didn't get picked when we were 14 and all of a sudden we are up in arms and our kid's like, oh yeah, it's fine, like, whatever. I think that is, again, something really beautiful to be very aware of, what is ours and what is theirs, because so often we can bring our baggage and our stories to our children, and again, it comes from a place of love where we're like, I don't want you to hurt like I hurt. I don't want you to be excluded like I was excluded. I don't want you to feel stupid like I felt stupid. Like we coming from this beautiful place of love and protection, but sometimes it's not our child's trigger or story. They're kind of pretty cool with it, right? And we're the ones like, no, and actually they're like, hey, settle down. I'm fine with this.
Or just stop putting your projections on me, although they or not. And then they feel like, oh, I have to try and somehow adjust to make them feel okay.
Yeah, totally.
I'm really conscious of time. I'm really keen if you can tell me a little bit about your school, because this to me is like gold.
Well, okay. Our beautiful school is, well, we've been open for 3 years now. It came about really because one of my clients, Mel, her child was starting prep, and she came for a session one day and she was just saying to me, he's so unhappy. Like, you know, he can't understand why he has to sit on the mat all the time and why he can't move his body and why he can't eat when he wants to eat. And they keep putting his name on the board because he keeps speaking. And, you know, and she's like, and she's from America and she's like, is this what school is? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And she's like, where's the school that's based on all the things you've taught me? And I'm like, well, I don't know if it exists because I haven't seen it, you know, and I'd navigated the schooling system with my 3 kids and it had been challenging as well. And then she said to me, well, what if we built a school based on all the things that you've taught me? And I kind of laughed and went, okay, because I'm like, I don't even like education. I have my own wounds around it. And I'm like, yeah, I have I don't know how to build a school. And she was really persistent. She's like, come on, like, you know, there's too much that you've taught me that needs to be out there in the world. And she's like, I'll fund it. I'll take care of all the infrastructure. Whoa. You build the school that you think should exist. So it's not often that someone comes along and says, hey, you know, here's a whole lot of money and let's build something, and you bring that dream to life. So I had to sit on it for a bit because, of course, all my fears and doubts came up and I can't do this and I'm not smart enough and all the stories. And then I don't know what it was. One day I just had a thought where I was like, well, who am I not to do this? It just takes one person to be brave enough to do something new, to create something different. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. And I kind of, as part of that whole trust, believing in a bigger picture, put it out there to the universe going, look, if I'm meant to do this, I need support. I need the right people to come along to really help me. And then I just stayed so open. I would just talk to everybody and sure enough, the right people would turn up and I'd be like, it was like a beautiful puzzle of coming together, people who knew way more about curriculum and all sorts of things. And really, I guess the whole philosophy of the school comes back to this, that children need to feel emotionally safe in order to learn, which is, for me, the most fundamental core piece of education that is not looked at all. Yeah. And so I'd done enough work with families and everybody to just see that when we don't feel emotionally safe, when we don't feel seen, when we don't feel like we belong, when we don't feel like we have choice and autonomy, then of course we often will not thrive in the way that we're designed to.
And so much damage is done about how you believe yourself and how you see yourself at those early ages.
Yeah. So it took 3 years to build Woodline. So I sat, I wrote every policy and everything. I spoke to every single parent. Like, it was full on. Like, and this is, I'm a kind of a bigger picture creative person, so this was torturous for me.
Yes, it sounds like hell.
Oh my God. It's very hard. I learned a lot. I had to be very humble. I had to be very courageous. I had to keep going, okay, keep learning, stay open. Like, it was hard. Anyway, so, you know, we opened our school 3 years ago. I think I cried the whole time, the whole first day. I just sat in the office and sobbed the whole day because I couldn't believe we'd finally done it. And, you know, I often love to say when I talk about my school, it is more magical and far exceeded what I ever dreamed it to be. And that has to do fully with the team of people that work there. Our incredible principal, our beautiful wellbeing leader and our leader of learning, and then the guides. We call them guides. You know, they are all amazing people.
What other people call teachers?
We call them guides, yep. And really how we do it at our school is it's relationship first. So, you know, we're a farm school, so we're set on 20 acres. So we have cows and chooks and, you know, all sorts of animals and stuff like that. And the children take care of the farm as part of, you know, the curriculum that we do. We work with the Australian curriculum, so we still have to abide by all the things that, you know, government says we have to. But what we do is we do it through a lens of, okay, how can we bring choice and autonomy to what we do? We do a lot of play-based learning, so we're heavily influenced by the Reggio Emilia philosophy. But we come back to firstly the person first. So, you know, the kids do not have to sit in chairs. They can sit on the couch or on the floor. They don't have to wear shoes. They climb trees if they want. Where possible, we do our learning outside whenever we need to. But I think the biggest thing, and, you know, we, like, even the fundamentals of every morning when we get to school, some of the kids will come and cut up the grazing platters. So everyone brings fruit and vegetable school so that there's food to eat if you want all day. You don't have to wait to recess, because for some kids they can't eat first thing in the morning, and then there's fruit and vegetables in the classroom that they can just eat. So we have grazing platters in every grazing platters. It makes it sound like they're fabulous, like, you know, some brie cheese and crackers. It's not that. No, it's just fruit and vegetables. But we have those in every classroom. The kids can go to the toilet when they want, just the basic fundamentals that I'm like, as humans, we should all have. But then we have small class sizes. So we have 16 max kids, and we have our main guide, who's our teacher, and then we have an assistant guide in every room, which is really there to just tune into the kids emotionally to see who's having a hard time. So really my philosophy was based on this, is that when children feel balanced, when they feel good in their bodies, they're open to learning. And when they feel seen and they have that relationship with the guide and the guide knows them, they know how they learn best. So whatever it is that we're working on or they're learning, there's choice for children to learn it. If they learn best with their hands, then they learn it with their hands. If they learn it through their body, they learn through their body. If they learn best with a pen and paper, then we use that,
And the guides can manage all of that sort of variation.
So there's such intention in everything that we do, and they look at all the kids that they've got and go, okay, we know that these guys work well together doing that and they can do it in that way. Or we look at, we have all our learning spaces are really intentional. We have different provocations set up everywhere and different ways for them to learn. And, we do also have some, basic learning. So sometimes we're just going to do some numeracy now, but we make it short and sharp, little groups, and then we bring in the fun and the play and the projects. So a lot of what we do is project-based learning as well. And we do lots of cross-age learning as well. So we don't call them grades. We just call them learning groups, because we can see in any learning group, you can have so many different degrees of ability. So we don't mark kids based on that. We look at who they are as that person, and we're watching their growth. And we're all about, firstly, emotional growth. And what we have seen in the 3 years is, of course, the academic growth has just gone off the charts, right? Of course it has, because these kids feel safe and seen. But I think, this was my goal, firstly, in creating the school. I was like, well, what do I want? I want these children to leave the school having such a strong sense of who they are, being connected to themselves, knowing that if they're out of balance or having a hard time, they can speak what they need, they can ask for support, they know what they need to find their way back into balance, they know how they learn best, right? And they have a love of learning. That was the goal, right? And so even in the few years that we've been open, we're seeing that with children. Like, to me, it's a win. I was with my principal the other day, and, a child just walks in and goes, I need to have a cry, Claire. Oh. And Claire's like, excellent, come on in. Oh. And she just walks in and sits in Claire's big chair and just has a big cry, and Claire just sits with her. Or kids will say, I'm not ready till I need to move my body. And we'll go, great, do you want to go run on the oval? Do you want to go have a trampoline? Do you want to go have a swing? So the children are learning to ask what they need, right? So they don't have to act out and they don't have to behave in ways. They can come back, and we have kids come from our other schools. One of my assistant guys was saying to me the other day, one of the little boys having a really hard time, and she went for a walk with him over to see the cows. And he said, do you know what I like about being at Woodline? And she's like, what's that? And she's like, he goes, I'm allowed to cry here. I was never allowed to cry at my other school. I was told that I was naughty.
I've got goosebumps.
And so that, to me, I'm like, well, there's the success,
there
right?
You go.
So it's, I know that what we're doing, we can't just pick up and put in the mainstream system because the mainstream system is not set up for that. And to do something like what we do, we are a non-punitive discipline school, which means we do not use punishments and rewards ever. We're always looking behind the behaviour of the child to go, what is it that they're needing? What are they telling us? What is the need here?
The Ross Green model.
Yeah, well, we're looking at going, there's always something, right? And how do we help them unpack what's going on so they can find their way back into feeling good so that they can learn when they're ready. I mean, I look, it all sounds, idyllic as I talk about it. We're only 3 years in, so we're still learning and, there's so much growth that we are doing and we're figuring out. But even from what has played out in these last few years, I'm just like, yeah, this is where education should be. I really believe this is how education should be. And I have a lot of teachers contact me all the time and going, can we come and learn? And we do. We're doing PD for teachers to bring some of those elements back into their systems. But it's very hard in a system that is based on punishments and rewards where there's one teacher and 28 kids. It's not set up for that.
You can't tinker at the edges.
You can't. No. I feel for these teachers so much because I know so many of them want to do it differently, but they're at the mercy of our system, which is driven by data and numbers, which it shouldn't be. The child should be at the centre of this. And so, I see what is possible with our education system. I feel like, and I get asked every week to build another Woodline somewhere else around the world. Like I could replicate the school over and over, but we won't, because we really want to do this well and collect the data, and so that we can be an example of what's possible. And now what I am doing, which is exciting, is I'm consulting with other people who are building similar schools like Woodline. So they're taking kind of what we're doing and creating their version of it, and I'm just helping them bring that to life for them, which is really exciting.
High school? Anyone doing the high school?
Not that I know of yet.
High school is just this whole,
I know.
I would move.
Yeah.
I would move.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I'll do the high school.
Yes, well, you know what? We will send a whole lot of kids to you if you do.
But they need the land. I want animals. Animals are so
they're important.
So important, and outdoor space and choice.
Yep.
And
all those
air.
that's it. All those fundamentals are so important. And look, we don't have a high school, and the parents at our school are like, please build one. And we played with it for a little bit, but then we were like, no, we still just need to do this well. And there may be the potential of a high school coming, but it's a bit of a different beast, a high school. And, I don't know, part of me still feels like I'm recovering from building this.
Oh my gosh, if you were going to sign up for that, I'd be like, you aren't even more of a trooper than you could possibly be.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to all the families who get to come to that. And I'm so inspired and just it's just such a gift that you've done.
It is a gift. And I feel like, I just feel that Mel and I had just the opportunity to do something really amazing. So her children go there, but my kids don't, they're too big for it. I feel very blessed that we had the opportunity to build something like this as an example of what is possible. And I hope that it is for others. And I say to people, it's always possible. If you had said to me 6 or 7 years ago, you'll build a school, I just would have been, don't be ridiculous. I don't even like education. Like, I just feel like there's no way.
Wow.
And now I find myself doing talks on education stuff, and I think, how did I get here? This is crazy, right? But I also feel like it's kind of comes a bit back to that full circle trust piece of like, I was at a point in my life probably about 7 years ago where I was, doing working as a therapist and raising my kids, and was feeling like there's got to be more. And I remember just thinking, I'm ready for something bigger, but I don't know what. And I had this bit of a spiritual mantra that I would do every morning when I woke up. I'd kind of just put my hand on my heart, and I would just say the words, show me where you need me, right? I would just kind of put it out there as a, show me where I can be of service, right? And then, this just was so not on the radar of what would happen, but it just came about. And then I kind of go, this was my gift of service. I feel that it just came through me, and Mel could facilitate that. And together we built this thing as a possibility for children. Like, I feel like it's a gift for children in these families and the healing that is possible. And, it's a school I wish I could have sent my kids to. It's a school I wish I had gone to.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like it can be an example of what could be possible. And I say to anyone, if you've got a desire, don't give up hope that there is a possibility. You never know. There's people out there that want to invest in stuff that makes a difference in the world, and stay open to the possibility that can happen, because the world needs more of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm so, so grateful and honoured and inspired and just really moved by meeting you, having you in person, and all the work you've done. And I'm so grateful that I can bring this to, because it's for everyone. It's for everyone. But there's some really, really important things in there for families that I'm working with, and that I'm, trying to work for on behalf of them, to really kind of unpack, how can this be okay? Because it can.
It can.
There's just a lot of work individually, but it can. And I know there's so much suffering, and I want to do whatever I can to try and help alleviate that suffering, build connection, and then create a community where you can help each other, just even by hearing, by listening, by holding space, and so many of the beautiful things that you've shared. And I mean, so many that we didn't even get to, but I just encourage everyone to just explore your work and see how it might help shift this experience. Because, as you say, it's our life, And we only have one of them. And it's exciting. I mean, there's actually, when you can set aside the grief and the sadness and the shock, then there's actually a whole lot of beautiful things that come from our experiences.
There is. And I think at the end of the day, you know, and people always ask me, like, you know, what's your biggest parenting advice or where is it? I come back to like two really simple things. Learn how to listen well, whether that's your children or your partner or your friends. Like, be a good listener, listen without fixing, and just bring that empathy, because that is one of the most powerful things we can do as humans. But the second thing is be so compassionate to yourself.
Yes.
Compassion is the answer.
Yes.
Because, you know, particularly I'm imagining for many of your listeners, they are doing a really, really tough job. And when we can bring compassion to ourselves, even in the times where we don't respond in the way we want to, or the times we mess up, the more compassion we have to ourselves, the more we will be gentler with ourselves, the more we'll take care of ourselves, which is what is needed to be able to turn up for our beautiful children. And the more compassion we have for ourselves, the more compassion we'll have for others.
Yes.
So compassion and listening to me are the top two to just keep coming back to when everything feels really hard. How do I be compassionate for myself and others? And how do I listen deeply, listen to myself and then also listen to others? And if we start there, then you'll be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be guided.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. I wish you all the very best. I can't wait to find out what you do next.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to start having dreams about building a school. It's not new. I've done it a few times in my imagination, but you really, like what you say about being open-minded about possibility. I'm totally on board with that.
You never know. You know, like I have groups in New South Wales and Queensland who contact me like that. We're a group of parents. Can you give us some guidance? Can you, you know, what does it take? You know, and I'm like, yeah, just start there. Just start having conversations, see what happens. You never know. You know, the power of people together and saying we want to do it in a different way. It's pretty amazing what's possible.
Thank you so much.
So welcome. Thanks for having me.
Such a gift. Thanks, Lael.